Julie. You're muted for the moment. Hi, Allison.
Hi, Gretchen. Hello, Jillian. I'm going to get the PowerPoint up so we can get this ready. Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet.
No? Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Well, yeah, there you go.
Okay. Oops.
Awesome.
In the beginning. Okay. Everything look good?
Looks great.
Excellent. Do we have anyone joining yet?
Yep, couple people are coming on board.
Excellent. Excellent. For anyone who's online, welcome. We will be starting promptly at 3, so we have about 8 minutes, and we'll just be hanging out until that time. Good afternoon. I think a couple more people have joined. It is about 7 minutes till 3. We will be starting promptly at 3, so just bear with us until that time. Good afternoon again. We have a couple more participants joining, and we will be starting in about 5 minutes. So again, thanks for joining. Just hang on with us a few more minutes. Good afternoon again. We've a few more people rolling in, so we are at about 5 minutes out. Thanks for those of you who are joining, waiting patiently, and again, we'll be kicking it off in about 5 minutes. We will be getting through this in probably less than 45 minutes. It is kind of a refresher, and I think many of you are already pretty up to speed on CBMA, but we'll kick off in about 5 minutes. Thanks for joining us. Good afternoon again. Just keeping the on schedule here. We'll get a few more minutes. We're really happy to have the amount of people that did sign up at this time of year, and we know it's a super busy time of year for everybody, especially in this business, between getting cargo in, between end of year events and just obligations. So we did want to fit this in at the very end of the year. We think it's important, so we really do appreciate that people are interested in getting some updates and just continuing to learn more and more about CBMA as this program evolves. So we are just a few minutes out, and just hang on for a couple more minutes. We'll start promptly at 3 o'clock. For those of you on, I said we have some of our WSSA team here that will be assisting with us, and Jillian on the screen. Jillian will be jumping in on Q&A as well as interjecting on any items where she wants to add something from the vast depth of technical knowledge she has on the program. So very, very glad to have Jillian here. And Gretchen in the background, Gretchen who's helped everybody register and keeps these programs running for us. So we've got our team on the line, and a few more people will be rolling in, so a couple more minutes. Good afternoon again. We've got a few more people rolling in, so just wanting to say hello and advising we will be starting in just a couple minutes at 3 o'clock. And we'll be running through this deck in probably a little under 45 minutes, and probably a little faster than that, but plenty of opportunities for Q&A as well. It is not a huge crowd today. I'm actually really happy to see how many people did join at this time of year. So we appreciate you being here today, and hope this will be helpful. So we just got about 1 more minute before we'll kick off, and I think we've got most of the participants who signed up on the line. So just another minute, and then we'll start rolling. Good afternoon again. We've got most of the registrants are online. It is just about 3 o'clock, and we like to be prompt, so we will start rolling with this particular webinar. Again, welcome to everyone who is on the line. Really appreciate you joining. We have done so many webinars on CBMA over the years, but we like to keep updating it and keep just reminding people of the opportunities. So it is a busy time of year, and again, happy that we did have quite a bit of interest in this and appreciate you being here. CBMA continues to evolve, and TTB has evolved as they have taken over it. There's some new efficiencies to the system that we'll talk about today as well. I think most of you probably know me, but my name is Allison Levitt. I've been in the shipping industry for almost 40 years, have been involved in all different aspects of shipping, customs brokerage, regulatory issues, freight forwarding, you name it. For the last 11 years, I have been running WSSA, the Wine and Spirits Shippers Association, and I'm very proud of the association and the team at WSSA. Today we have Jillian Carpenter on screen. She will be assisting with the webinar, answering questions. She is the technical backbone of our CBMA program, has been heavily involved from the very beginning when the law was passed, and dug deep way back then, back in 2018, and has been continuing to work on CBMA since that time, and has helped many of our members save literally millions of dollars in claims on the CBMA side. So glad to have Jillian here today and for all the work that she's done on CBMA. We all have Gretchen Bakioki on the line as well. Gretchen is our program manager. She's the one that does all your registrations, keeps our webinars moving, manages all of our different programs, as well as works heavily in our insurance area. So Gretchen, thank you for all the help as well, and glad to have you here with us to help us with any technical issues. Hopefully we won't have any. So a couple points too before we get into the details of the CBMA webinar today. Let's see, there we go. Whoops, sorry. Sometimes it always starts a little slow. Let me get back up one slide. There we go. So a little bit about WSSA. So we are one of the oldest shipping associations in the country. We were founded in 1976 and really built on three pillars. The first and the foremost, still the most important to us, is the negotiation of competitive shipping rates and services with all of the ocean carriers. So that is still the top priority of WSSA, and something that has evolved enormously over the last few years. The volatility in the shipping industry is incredible. We don't see any end in sight for that particular volatility between the geopolitical situation, the Red Sea situation, potential for the ILA strike on the East Coast on January 15. It is a nonstop job, and I will say much more difficult than it was 10 years ago, and we don't see, as said, any end in sight to that volatility. The second pillar that we are built on is the risk management piece. We insure over $1 billion worth of cargo on all modes of transportation: ocean, air, truck, rail, in warehouses. It is what I would say the best in class for beverage alcohol in the world in terms of cargo protection and insurance. Something, again, we're very proud of. We built it to really service all of the needs of the beverage alcohol industry. And in the third piece, education, advocacy, intel for the industry. This is what we're doing today, and this is what will be another incredibly active period for us as we look at the tariff threats that are looming, working on the lobbying efforts, joining with the other associations and educating Congress about the importance of beverage alcohol to all of the various levels of the industry and the three-tier system, as well as the trickle down on warehouses and truckers and shipping lines, you name it. So that's a fight that we are actively engaged in right now, and will certainly be going strong over the next weeks. So we have done, as said, a lot of webinars on CBMA, and I think most of you on this webinar, sorry, there we go, are probably quite well versed in the Act. But I think, and hopefully well-versed in the Act, and also participating in the incredible benefits that came along with this piece of legislation. CBMA is now a permanent part of the Internal Revenue Code. When we say permanent, that means permanent until someone decides to either get rid of it or change it. But at this point, it is a permanent part of the code. It provides reduced rates or tax credits for beer, wine, and spirits, either produced in the USA or imported into the USA. The imported part is where we focus, and this is the more complex part of the law, and has various steps required to achieve the benefits. Sorry, my system does seem to be changing pages very slowly. There we go. Okay. The timeline overview. We're not going to get into the weeds on this. I think, again, most of you have a pretty good awareness of how CBMA came into existence. So it was part of the first Trump administration Tax Cuts and Jobs Act bill, got passed at the end of 2017. CBMA went into effect 2018. It has evolved in various ways through the years, with the biggest evolution being the transfer from CBP, U.S. Customs Administration, to TTB, Department of Treasury. So Homeland Security to Department of Treasury. That was a big change, and that came along with the permanence of the code. So as much as that was disappointing to some people, because the change also brought with it the fact that you now have to pay the full tax up front at time of entry, with that compromise, we got the permanence. So that's where we are now. The system is running pretty well, and the process is, I'd say, much more concise than it was when it was under CBP, much more automated, and again, very effective overall. The benefits have remained unchanged in terms of the tax rates. Sorry, guys. I'm not sure why this is running so slowly. There we go. Just takes a second to adjust to each slide. I think it's important to note these three kind of key categories in terms of the benefits of CBMA. When you look at the breakdown of these tiers and think about on a per container basis, if you look at a container of wine, if you have the allocation under CBMA of that first tier, the dollar credit per gallon, that saves about $2,400 on a container, 1,200 cases, 9-liter cases. So it's a nice chunk of change. If you have that first tier allocation at the full allocation from 3 different wine producers, that's potentially $1.3 million in the bank. Same thing with spirits. It is potentially per container, if you're at that first tier, about a $38,000 tax savings. So again, that's incredible bang for the buck. Beer is a little less dramatic, but it still is a nice chunk of change on a per container basis. And the volume allowed is massive. Same thing with the second tier on spirits. So the savings are there. Everybody who can possibly take advantage of this should do so. Otherwise, you are leaving money on the table. So the eligibility piece, this is probably the most important part of determining whether you can benefit from CBMA. So every USA direct importer is eligible. If you are paying the duty and tax, you can look at the eligibility factor under CBMA. So the caveat here is that the foreign producer must meet the requirements outlined in the law. And the biggest issue in terms of whether a foreign producer is eligible to give you allocation is whether they are part of a controlled group, whether they have ability as a producer. Maybe it's a wine producer in Italy, but they might be owned by a large conglomerate. Can that wine producer give you the importer allocation? So these are the things to look at. We can help you understand eligibility. We have all of the details available to get you through that process, but determining eligibility is the first step when it comes to finding out if indeed you can take advantage of CBMA. So the steps, once you determine that yes, you have some eligibility, these are the basic steps to get the benefits. So on the first step, the foreign producer or an assigned third party must register in the TTB Foreign Producer Portal. They go in, they register, they get their TTB ID, and once they are registered, they can submit those importer assignments. They are linked to you, the importer, via your basic permit number. We will say that a lot of foreign producers may balk at that. They may not want to do the extra work. That's where you can definitely find another avenue. Either do it yourself, get the authorization, or hire a third party. Jillian does this for a lot of people, works closely with the producers, gets the information, gets the authorization, gets them set up. Once you've got that eligibility and you got a foreign producer that is giving you allocation, you want to make sure you have got your TTB importer portal account set up. You don't have to wait for your foreign producer to provide you allocation. You can do this account setup anytime, but that is a key step to create that importer portal. In this case, a third party cannot create that account. It has to be created by the owner or officer of the company who is the key contact in the Permits Online account. This is a question that does come up a lot. That first setup of the importer portal must go through that key contact who will then receive a code to activate the portal. There was a lot of questions on that during the early days. If someone didn't know the owner, officer, the key contact, if the person had changed, I think most people have worked through that. But that is a step that we can help with as well if you're running into difficulty. Step 3, once you have the foreign producers assignments and you've got your portal, you can see your assignments, get that information to your customs broker. To effectively take advantage of CBMA, there is still the requirement that the customs broker designate the entry with the C designation, showing it as CBMA eligible, and the broker must input data elements related to the tax rate and allocation. So the broker still does have to do upfront work. That change to TTB did not eliminate those data elements. But what does happen now is once those entries are submitted and filed, that data does flow from the ACE system, the customs system, to the TTB portal. That flow does seem to be working very well. I think that was an area where we were a bit skeptical at the beginning, but it is working. The way to get the claim, to get your refunds, is that to file on a quarterly basis once the quarter has closed, to go into the portal and review and file your CBMA claims, submit your claims. So through the TTB importer portal. Again, relatively simple, does take a little work, but the system is effective. Okay, deadlines. I think this is the reason we wanted to do it at this time of year is to actually reiterate these deadlines. Any allocations that you can get for CBMA must be received by December 31st for 2024 arrivals. So the window of opportunity to get allocations is from October 1st of the prior year to December 31st of the year of the arrival of the goods. So what I think the importance of this right now here, with a couple weeks left of the year, if you have some producers that perhaps you maxed your allocations and that producer gave allocations to multiple importers, it never hurts to check to see if you can get more allocation. Things change a lot during the course of a year. Maybe the second importer that they allocated to did not actually import as much as they expected. There could be some additional money on the table. So if you think that is the case, if you have producers who had allocations to multiple parties, it certainly doesn't hurt to ask if there is any additional allocation available. If there's 3 or 4 containers that you could get CBMA on that you didn't expect, and it's $10,000 in the bank, it's worth it. So we just want to reiterate that. We'll talk a little bit about how assignments can change over the course of the year, but the key thing is if there's any opportunity to get more CBMA benefits in this calendar year, you've got to do it now. In terms of the actual filing of the claims, there is a 3-year window. So if for whatever reason you get the allocations in, but your broker does not input the CBMA data elements, and a year goes by, that does not mean you are out of luck in filing those claims. The key thing is getting those allocations in. So the 3-year window exists, and that is something I think that everybody also should be fully aware of. Some of the best practices that we would recommend for CBMA, and this is, again, through years of doing this and running through the technical process, try to get those foreign producer registrations and assignments in prior to your cargo arriving in the United States. This doesn't always happen. There are producers that like to wait till either near the end of the year or mid-year to determine what they are going to allocate. But the more you can get upfront and prior to arrival, the smoother the whole system will work. The easier it is, the less kind of a redo of work. And that kind of leads to the step number 2 in terms of making sure you're giving your customs broker the information that they need to correctly file those data elements. So the designation codes, the allocations, the tax rates. Again, if you can do that prior to the customs entry being filed, that saves you work down the line. Any broker who has to go back in and fix an entry, do what's called a post-summary correction, they will charge for that, and it just can delay your overall process. So the more you can get done ahead of time, the better. Third item here is track those benefits. So maintain some type of tracker of every single entry, the allocations, the depletions, the tax rate. Know exactly what you are going to be looking at when you do your claim at the end of the quarter or the beginning of the next quarter. You can use a third party for that. You can do it internally. Your broker can help you with that. Jillian does a lot of this for many different importers. It's an extra set of eyes. It actually really helps the broker as well. It's a cross check on what they're doing. Brokers are very busy. You know, they may go over allocation or not see that a tier has changed and just miss something. And that will create an error when it comes to the claim. So we highly recommend tracking every entry and the allocations, depletions, and tax rates. Then that leads to the step 4 in terms of when you actually go into the file your claim and submit your claim in the portal. If you don't have a tracker, it's going to be very hard for you to audit that claim. You know, if you're doing a lot of entries, then, you know, 1 or 2 could slip through the cracks and you may not know it unless you have a tracking report and the total amount that you expect to be getting back at the end of that quarter. So again, from our opinion, these are the best practices. So bulk, we want to talk about bulk a little bit, and the bulk wine versus bulk spirits. This, especially for bulk spirits, this has come up endlessly in terms of how to get CBMA benefits on bulk spirits. For wine, it is pretty easy. Importers of bulk wine can claim CBMA on the bulk shipments when they bring product in and pay the full tax at time of entry. So it is eligible for bulk wine, and same process as for case goods when it comes to doing the claims. For bulk spirits, unfortunately, this is an area that is virtually impossible to obtain at time of entry and then go through the normal claim process as an import. There is no way for an imported bulk spirit to be tax paid at time of entry. It must move to a DSP. So unfortunately, for those people who are importers of bulk spirits and they're using a DSP that's bottling for a lot of people or has domestic production, it is the DSP that actually becomes the taxpayer. Thus, they are the ones that, if there is available allocation under CBMA, they're the ones that would be driving that. So if they have their own production, they're going to take it for themselves. There may be something left over or second tier for the importer of the bulk spirits who uses that DSP, but it is not available directly to that importer. Now, one of the things that we've worked on and talked to a lot of people about, and there are people using this, what I would call CBMA loophole for bulk spirits, the concept of alternating proprietorships. So this is something that the TTB has set up and allowed, where multiple distillers, each with their own permit, can share a production facility. So say if you're using a bottling facility and they are willing to work with you on an alternating proprietorship, you could get your own DSP permit and basically become the taxpayer, thus making yourself eligible for CBMA benefits. So this is something, it's not a simple process. There's a lot of inventory control, a lot of regulation, but could be totally worth it. You've heard about the tax savings available on spirits, and there's just no reason why you can't look into this if it makes sense for your particular business process. Some of the new features that have come out this year, the latest one in November 2024 is the new message feature. This does give availability to ask a question, send a message basically in the claim that you are submitting or submitted. If you have a rejection, if you have a question, this can now be done in the message box. This is also a two-way street. The reviewer at TTB can actually message you in this same kind of message box feature. So I think this is a significant improvement on the communication. We know from the past, if we have had to email TTB to answer any questions on claims, it can take weeks for them to get back to us. So we don't have a lot of data on this yet, but what we have seen is that the answer process is faster with this new feature. So we'll see if this really does improve kind of the back and forth on any claims, but it is now active. Second one is the banking feature. This was rolled out in June. It used to be when you were submitting a claim, every single time you had to go in and put in your banking information, and it did not get stored. So in June, they updated this feature in the entity management section where you can go in and input your banking information. It is stored there. So when you submit the claim, you just have to basically hit the button for your banking information. And Jillian, remind me, you can put multiple accounts?
Yes, you can add multiple accounts. So then when you go in to submit your claim, you can select which one you want the direct deposit to go to.
Excellent. And I think I shouldn't say downside of that, or the reminder on that, get this into your entity management. If you're in the middle of a claim and you haven't put your banking information, there's now no way to put it in when you're actually doing the claim. Have I got that right?
Yeah, you can't put if it's not in, you're about to submit the claim, you're gonna have to save the claim, go to the banking management, add the banking, and then go back to the claim. But an entity manager is the only one that can add the banking information. So if you're not an entity manager on the account, then you're gonna have to get the entity manager to do that. And then otherwise you can get a check in the mail.
Which I think, initially people were getting, thousands of CBMA checks on each individual entry. So this is another, I think, overall improvement with the conversion to TTB. Okay, some of the common questions that we get, and we do have ability for, any Q&A, you can ask your question in the Q&A field if there's additional questions that you would like to add to this, but we wanted to just highlight some of the most common things that we see coming up. I think one of the most common is why are some of my entries missing? What's going on? I'm doing my claim and there's 3 entries missing, or there's only a partial amount here. So some of this is indeed just system error. There sometimes are some glitches when the information is transferred. But the first thing to do when you see something missing is to check with your customs broker to make sure they filed that entry with all of the data elements and flagged it with the C. That's probably the most common error. If it just doesn't get done by the broker, it is not going to show up in the portal. The other issue here is, unfortunately, if something doesn't show up, and it's usually because either the broker or the system error, if they can't, it's very difficult for TTB to fix that in the portal. So generally, if there's missing entries, you will end up filing a manual claim on those. So it's not unfixable, but it does take a little bit of work when something is missing. Liquidated entries. So when can I still claim on those liquidated entries? We mentioned that 3-year window. When we say liquidation, that's customs speak basically for finalizing the entry. Once a customs entry is sent through the system, it liquidates in about 350 days approximately, and that entry then cannot be changed. So if indeed there are entries that were filed without the CBMA data elements, you do have 3 years to make that claim, but it will be done on a manual basis after that point. So don't give up, but it's got to be done on a manual basis. Can a third party file claims? Yes, and that is absolutely something that we do on behalf of many of our clients' members, but you can designate a third party to file the claim. Now, the only issue there is that they have to be a designated party in the portal. And Jillian, can you just explain the kind of designations on the preparer versus submitter?
Yes, so when the key contact, the owner officer creates the account, they can give authorization to anyone to access the account. And then they either give you a submitter, which means you can prepare and submit claims, or a preparer, and then that means you just prepare the claim. So those are the two options.
So a third party could be listed as either a preparer or a submitter, correct?
Yeah, right.
Okay. And again, kind of on that line, can someone register for my form producer? We mentioned that earlier. That is definitely possible, but for that to happen, you do need written authorization from the producer authorizing a third party, whether it's you, the importer, whether it's someone like us or a third party. You do need that written authorization. And we have seen that TTB may ask to see the letter authorizing. It may, bring up an audit of some sort. Most firm producers are doing a pretty good job, I think, with their registration, but there's just some that don't want to do it. So hire someone to get that done, do it internally. It's not so hard to do. Changing assignments. I think this is another thing we touched on at the beginning when I said, look at, if you think you can get more allocation from a producer, it is very easy for a producer to increase the allocation in the system. What the complexity can come in if they have to actually get that allocation from someone else. So they have to actually pull allocation from another importer that hasn't used it. And Jillian, want to just walk through that process quickly for us?
Yes, so for the increase, as Allison was saying, it's very easy if there is enough assignment remaining in the respective tier. The producer can just go into the foreign producer portal, and by the assignment, they hit increase, and then they increase accordingly. But if they've already exceeded that tier and they want to take some back from a importer who hasn't used it all, the importer has to go into their portal and return the assignment, and they can return any amount that hasn't been used. And then once they do that, it's pretty immediate. It will be reflected in the foreign producers portal, and then the foreign producer can go and then issue an additional assignment to a new importer, or increase another importer's assignment. And while we're on this, I'm going to go ahead and answer a question we've received. It was any update on TTB giving a little grace period after 12/31 to allow us to see the full calendar year of imported gallons. So essentially asking, can we see our imported gallons for the year and get increased assignments after 12/31? I
No.
haven't heard much. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that
Way to
one
put
is,
it.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I think it's been a fairly hard no. It is something that
Yeah.
we have asked for, and with some of the different associations, we've approached TTB to see if they would have an extra month where people can make those adjustments. As of now, that has not happened. But we don't give up on making those type of requests. But that right now it has to be done in 2024 or in the calendar year. So sorry about that for that question. I think the other questions that come up though, in terms of this final one, this really relates to control groups, and there's always a lot of confusion about controlled groups and percentages of ownership. So you're buying wine from a producer in New Zealand, and they get bought by a big company in Australia. What do you do? How does this work? This one is a little more complex because it really depends on a few factors. And the first one being the percentage of ownership. And the second being if that the company that buys the producer that you're working with is exporting and taking CBMA benefits or applying CBMA benefits to another importer. So if the producer that is bought, the share that the new owner has is less than 10%, you don't need to worry about anything. If it's over 10% and they are also allocating under CBMA, then absolutely it needs to be reported, and it potentially needs to be shared. If the ownership, I might have messed that up a little bit because it does get confusing with all the percentages.
So it doesn't need to be shared if they own 10% or more, or between 10% and let's say 48%, the allocation doesn't need to be shared, but you have to input the information, their ownership information, provided they are issuing allocations to other importers. But if, let's say you have another owner and they own 49%, but they don't export or do anything to the States, you still have to put them in the portal as a part of an owner and their ownership information.
So those percentages, like I said, the 10 to 48% is one thing. Over 48 to that 49%, that is the consideration for controlled group ownership, which, you know, again, TTB put in that 10% level as kind of a baseline amount, so they would have more ability to see who's connected and audit control groups, because I think that was one of the biggest problems under CBP. They had very limited ability to check on control groups, and under Department of Treasury, there's a lot more scrutiny on that. So something to be aware of for sure. Those are said kind of the most common questions that we see from what we do. I think we've explained some of the services that we provide. If anyone else has any questions, please type them into the Q&A or send us an email, and we can answer that. And Jillian, I think the question just came up from on where you can see your allocation. So
Yep. So where you can see your allocation. So when you have access to your importer portal, on the dashboard, basically there you will see all of your assignments, and you can toggle by year, and you can export those assignments and have it in an Excel file as well. But all the assignments issued to you will be in your portal, and if they're not in your portal, they don't exist. So if you have a supplier that says, oh yeah, I submitted those, well, if it's not in the portal, it's not going to be of any value. So you need to make sure that that supplier submitted it, and double check by checking your portal to make sure it's in there.
And we can send you a screenshot of exactly what that looks like, so you can see what you're looking for. So for the that question, we'll definitely follow up and just pop you kind of the area of the portal and a screenshot of what it should look like, so you can see what you're looking for. And again, if you're not able to find it or have questions, just give us a call, pop an email. We can set up a quick one-on-one. Okay, well, from our perspective, that said, we wanted to do this pretty quickly, just kind of a refresher for everybody. I think one of the other things that we do just want to highlight in terms of, especially on the wholesaler tier, we would say that tier, distributor wholesaler tier, is the tier that is the most problematic in terms of getting CBMA benefits. The distributor tier, you're generally buying from a USA seller. You may not have the direct contact with the producer. If you do have direct imports and you are paying duty and tax and you're not getting any CBMA benefits, it's time to take a deep dive and look at those producers that you're working with and see what might be available. So we have helped a lot of the distributor tier with this, going through their volumes, through their producers. We have a pretty good sense of ones that, you know, absolutely will not have any allocation available due to their whether controlled group or their size, and those that may have allocation available. So I think one distributor that we worked with, we ended up saving them about $400,000 in taxes. It takes a little work to get there, but just don't leave it on the table. That's kind of where, we, especially with everything else going on right now, when we're seeing things like a $2,000 equipment operation surcharge because of this either pending strike on the ILA, or because there's disruption in the ocean carriers, there's the tariff threats. Anywhere you can save some money, it's going to help your business at this point. So these are the type of things we do. All of that in terms of whether it's registering foreign producers, tracking claims, filing claims, just guiding you on anything to do with CBMA. That is what we are here for. So with that said, if there's no other questions, we are here for you. We thank you so much for joining at this time of year, and we wish everybody a very happy holiday season. We will be kicking off in January with either late January or early February with one of our insurance webinars. We always try to do one of those a year. And depending on what happens with tariffs, we will certainly be active in the fight, as well as probably running a webinar should tariff action start to happen. And so a lot ahead for us. Appreciate the support. Happy holidays, and thank you for joining.